And good morning, my beautiful America. Welcome back to the All American Book Club. We are live here in our nation's capital. Yes, it is a shining city on a hill, whether we are in a government shutdown or not. You know what? Because we are all about God, country, and family here at the All American Book Club. We are bringing over to the show for the very first time a very powerful guest, a friend to the show, a former radio host, and also one who is battling Christian persecution on the front lines internationally and has written many powerful articles in the Daily Wire. Brad Brandon, I want you to go check something out. He is the founder and the CEO of Across Nigeria. He's been working on this effort since 2018, and I'm honored to have him here at the show. So will you please help me welcome for the very first time, Brad Brandon. I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Eden, good to be on with you this morning.
Absolutely. So, as we are here both on the YouTube channel and also live here in our nation's capital, I want to talk about a couple things that are really facing our culture that you and I see on a daily basis in our work together. And that is Christian persecution. And it is becoming more popular, let's just put it that way, to talk about when you've been working on this since 2018. And I have to ask you, let's talk a little bit about your battleground, your boots, and where you have tread. But I want to go back to the very start. Why Nigeria for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was a pastor of a church where I am based out of here in Connecticut when I'm in the US. And I pastored there. I started a church in Minnesota, came out to Connecticut, pastored there. And I realized that my relationship with the Lord had become really stale.
Mhm.
And, it's one of those things, it's kind of like a frog in boiling water. You don't really notice it. It happens so slowly that you just don't really see it happening. But you wake up one day and you realize, wow, my relationship with the Lord and my walk with the Lord is nearly non-existent.
Mhm.
So my ministry had become really nothing more than a work of my own flesh. And I could see that. Like, this was not God working through me anymore. This was me doing it. And
Mhm.
that's a really bad place to be because that's unsustainable, especially in ministry. That's unsustainable. God did something pretty amazing, though. I did cry out to him and say, God, I want more than this. I want to go back to that time when I had a walk with you. And God got my attention by putting me in the hospital. I was in the ICU for over a month.
Mhm.
And that really woke me up to a relationship with God. God began to speak to me. I'd never really had that experience before.
Mhm.
And God began to speak to me and talk to me, and I began to talk to him. It was really a sweet thing that happened. And I always say, apart from my salvation, that was probably the greatest
Mhm.
spiritual experience that I ever had. For me, I had to be put in the hospital and all my strength taken from me, and
Mhm.
just put me in a position where I couldn't do anything, and it had to be God. For other people, that it might look like something different, but for me, that's what it took. And it was from that experience that God led me to Nigeria. Literally, I was sitting at a computer. I was supposed to fly into somewhere else. And God said, I want you to fly into Abuja, Nigeria. I didn't know anybody, I didn't have any contacts there. So, by faith and knowing that it was God's voice, because I had become familiar with his voice, now having had that experience and
Mhm.
that renewed walk with him, all of a
Yeah,
sudden, and it's kind of like what Jesus says. He says, my sheep hear me, they know my voice, and they follow me. You have to hear him and know his voice in order to follow him. And
absolutely.
so he spoke to my spirit. It wasn't an audible voice, but he spoke to my spirit and said, I want you to go to Abuja, Nigeria. By faith, I bought a one-way ticket to Abuja, Nigeria. I literally landed in the Abuja airport and said, okay, God, here I am. What's next? And through a turn of events and through course, God led me to a Fulani Muslim village, and I was able to minister to them and just show them the love of Christ. And that is the start of Across Nigeria. So I always tell people, I didn't choose Nigeria. Nigeria chose me. God led me there. And it's just turned into this amazing ministry that we have now that's reaching thousands of Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ and helping persecuted Christians in that area as well.
Well, you just mentioned something, the persecuted church, the persecuted Christians across the world. And we are seeing it more than ever before in this culture, right? And it knowing has for as long as I've known you, we have been charging the hill, literally charging Capitol Hill, going uphill with this battle cry to make people aware of what's happening around the world in Nigeria and what is happening and how it's being brought here to the home front as well.
It is. Yeah.
And I want to talk about, some of the battleground that you have literally been on the front lines to see what is happening to the persecuted church in Nigeria. And some of your powerful stories, we need to hear these stories to wake up the church.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think more than ever before, where we are in our country, the church needs a huge shakeup.
Mhm.
And we can say, okay, well, that's happening in Nigeria. That's happening somewhere else around the world. But in actuality, it's right here too,
Yeah.
whether we want to accept it or not. So let's talk about what you have experienced, and then let's make it tangible for the audience to say, oh, wow, I'm seeing that here too.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to northern Nigeria, and I know
Yeah.
there are other places in the world where persecution is happening, but I think northern Nigeria is on a different level because right now it
Mm,
is the most dangerous place to be a Christian. Last year, 70% of all the Christians that were killed in the whole world, 70% of them were killed in northern Nigeria. So it is to say it's a hotbed of Christian persecution is an understatement.
absolutely.
It surpasses other places in the world as far as killings go, by far. It's a culture of death in northern Nigeria. Christians are second class citizens. It's a place that is 12 of the northern states in Nigeria are controlled by Sharia law. And that's important to kind of break that down because I think a lot of us here in America don't understand what Sharia law is. It's really the convergence of religion and government. So
Mm,
there's no separating line between religion and government. The religion is the government.
mm,
And under Sharia law, they have what's called blasphemy laws.
mm,
Most blasphemy laws are punishable by death. And one of those is that if you're a Muslim and you convert to Christianity, that is a crime punishable by death. So what does that look like in that area and among the people? Your
right.
family can either kill you themselves to avenge the honor of that family for converting to Christianity, or they can hire somebody to kill you. And that is almost like a cottage industry in northern
Yes.
Nigeria where people are being paid to kill other people because they've converted to Christianity. So even if you survive that, and
Right.
even if you are a Christian living in northern Nigeria, because there are Christians there, there's communities of Christians throughout northern Nigeria. You're a second class citizen. And what that means is that if you go to the market, nobody has to sell you food. The Christians have trouble getting food because people won't sell them food because they're a Christian. If you have medical needs, you can't go to a doctor because the doctor won't see you. If you want clean water, if you want to hire somebody to come out and drill a well or dig a well for clean water, nobody's going to come out and do that for you. So those are the conditions that Christians live in northern Nigeria. And that's what it looks like. And the one thing that I like to point out too is that this isn't something that happens overnight. Like you don't wake up one day and all of a sudden Christian persecution is there. It happens slowly over time. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you can't get clean water, you can't get food, you can't get medical care. You can't even send your kids to school and be educated because no one will educate Christian children. So that's kind of gives you a snapshot of what it looks like in northern Nigeria.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So, you have been working on the front lines since 2018, primarily doing this work. And, our conversations that we've had offline and then we are sharing now with this audience has been that constant fight to even have Christian news organizations
Yeah.
talk about this. But we noticed a flipping point when Bill Maher decided he was going to talk about it. And then it became in vogue for Christian outlets to talk about it, even legacy media. But that has been an uphill battle. Why do you think one Maher took it upon himself? Because you've been doing this for so long, and then all of a sudden Bill Maher comes along and says, let's talk about Christian persecution. Can you talk a little bit about that segment? Because you write about it in the Daily Wire a couple times.
Yeah, I first of all, I think it's really ironic that it took a liberal comedian who has been very critical of Christians in the past. It took him and his show to push this whole Christian persecution thing to the forefront, talking about northern Nigeria and what's going on there. So I think that's very ironic that he did that. And you're absolutely right. Ever since it was a 47-second clip where he
Yes.
talked about the persecution that's happening in northern Nigeria, and it went viral. And from there, a lot of the conservative podcasters and Christian podcasters picked it up and started talking about it.
Mhm.
Why do I think he did that? The only thing I can say is I've been following Bill Maher for a long time. I actually enjoy a lot of his stuff. I don't agree with him on a lot of his stuff, but
Yeah.
I do enjoy him. And one thing I've learned about Bill Maher is that he does have a willingness to look at the facts and put everything on the table and consider it. He's not the kind of liberal that wants to shut down the voices of opposition and silence everyone who disagrees with him. He's always welcomed opposition and
Right.
always considered things that he may not necessarily agree with. He'll consider them. And I think it's kind of his the way that he looks at things and that perspective that he comes to the table with that allowed him to have the freedom to be able to talk about that, even though you would think that would have been a conservative or a Christian's job to do that. But
Absolutely.
but
No,
Bill Maher
absolutely.
did it. So
Well, I sit there and, like I said, I'm going to refer everybody in our audience to the Daily Wire. Go check out Brad Brandon's byline. He has at least 7 articles, I believe, now on the Daily Wire talking to this. But I want to talk about this. The Christian persecution worldwide, he is raising the flag as you've been since 2018. But I almost wonder with his momentum in doing this, did he realize maybe in the back of his mind, what we are seeing happen in the New York City mayoral election and the repercussions of either having a Mondami candidate in New York City, and how you have seen this pop up around the nation on the home front. You've seen it in Dallas, you've seen it in St. Paul. You have even mentioned about how family members have killed family members because of the Sharia law. Talk a little bit about that, where for the calls to action, members of Congress are listening to the show, the White House, staff members, Hill staff members, young staff members who are still educating themselves. What could be our call to action here on the home front? And, his red flag, thinking in the back of my mind, we have this New York City mayoral election that has drawn so much attention with Mondami, and the whole Sharia law. Legalizing prostitution is one of those big things.
hmm Yeah, and I think the tie with Mondani is that he even now really refuses to come out and refute the idea of globalize the intifada. And I know that that phrase is often connected to what's going on in Israel, but globalize intifada is an Islamic phrase that literally means the taking over of Islam by force. Israel is not the only place where intifada has happened. It's happened all over the world where Islam has declared intifada in an area. So it's broader than just what's going on. He's he's not willing to recant or criticize the idea of globalize the intifada, it means that he is in favor of the forceful installation of Islamic rule, which is Sharia law.
Right.
And we see that happening in places all over the world. Sharia law has grown exponentially. I think back in 1981, there was one country that officially adopted Sharia law as its legal system, and that was Saudi Arabia. You fast forward to where we're at now, I think it's upwards of 38 or 39 countries now around the world officially have adopted Sharia law as their legal system. So it's growing exponentially. We see that all throughout Europe. And you go to places like the
Right.
UK,
Yes.
go to places even like Switzerland, places you just wouldn't think this would be a thing. Germany is another place. Greece is another place where it's happening. These are places where they have what they call no-go zones, and what that means is that these are Islamic areas where first responders can't even go into these areas. Police officers, paramedics can't go into these areas because they're controlled by Islamic rule. These are areas that are in Western cities that have been totally shut off to the rest of the world around them. So
Right.
you kind of look at Europe as the canary in the coal mine, and even the UK has introduced what it's called its Arbitration Act, and buried deep in that Arbitration Act that they've adopted is using Islamic rulings, so Sharia law rulings, as
Mhm.
precedents in their court systems. And that all sounds crazy, but it's
Yes.
happening in Europe. And the reason why we should be concerned about that here in the West is Europe is always sort of that they're about 20 years ahead of us as far as those things are concerned.
Right.
And what do we see happening here in America right now? Well, back in 2009, there was a Superior Court judge that made a ruling on a woman who was seeking a protective order against her husband, a Muslim woman seeking a protective order on her husband. She was claiming that he was abusing her. And that judge consulted the family's imam.
Mhm.
The imam ruled on that, and the judge ruled according to what the imam said. So basically, you have a court this is in New Jersey, 2009. So you have a court here in New Jersey that is using the ruling of an Islamic imam as his precedent in order to rule on this. Now, that ended up getting overturned by a appeals court.
Right.
So praise God that that happened. But it should just show us that there is a volition, there is a
Mhm.
will, there's a push to bring Sharia law into the United States of America. And Sharia law is never satisfied to assimilate, it always wants to dominate. That's just how it's been around the world. Just look at history, that's how it's always worked.
So, one thing I want to give our audience as we are in the month of November, but our team across Nigeria and together with Washington Policy Institute, the Washington Times, National Religious Broadcasters, and many other organizations, we are coming together the first Thursday in December, December the 4th, to gather together on the persecuted church and Christian persecution around the world at the Museum of the Bible. And as we have about a minute left in the show, I'd love for you to share just a little bit, as it's a call to action for the Hill. It's a call to action for the White House. It's a call to action for the church. And one thing I would love for you to share in the final few minute we have left is, what is the final message that you would share with these young minds, and as we invite them to come to this event?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think they're the future of our country. That's where our country is headed. I think the biggest thing is to be aware of what's going on. Look around you, look at what's happening in our country, look at what's happened throughout history. History repeats itself. And I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest warning, is to be aware of what's happening. Look at what's happening in northern Nigeria when Sharia law is introduced into that area. Didn't always have Sharia law. In fact, Muslims and Christians in northern Nigeria lived peacefully for many years. But all of a sudden, something happened and that changed. What was that? It was the introduction and the domination of Islam in those areas. We're seeing that happening here in the United States, slowly but surely. My biggest message to them is be aware. Look at history, look how it's happened. And I think also to the faith community is this is a time when we need to be on our knees praying and seeking God for power and strength and perseverance.
Well said. So Brad Brandon, thank you so much for being here at the All American Book Club. I want to encourage the audience, go to Across Nigeria, sign up for the newsletter, get involved, donate, be a part of this. And if you want to be a part of this panel, we would love to have you come to the Museum of the Bible on Thursday, December the 4th, to honor the church, honor the Christians around the world as we educate this next generation. And we invite members of Congress, senators, the White House to come participate and be a part of this Christian persecution panel. So Brad Brandon, thank you so much for your service.
Thanks, Eden.